So we're going to move on to Islamic art. And one of the caveats. So this map here shows you where Islam was developed through the Umayyad Empire. The Umayyad Empire was one that spread Islam throughout the Eastern world into North Africa. You see that the areas that have been converted to Islam are areas like Turkey and Syria. You see Egypt and Northern Africa. And then Spain has that interesting color because half of it was conquered by Islam, and then Christians regained control of it back. This is the Dome of the Rock. It is in Jerusalem, and it was done in 687 to 692. It is the architectural representation of the triumph of Islam over Christianity by the Umayyad caliphs in the late 6th century. What's a caliph? It's just a fancy word for an Islamic ruler, a king. Its architectural elements, though, are architectural elements that are reminiscent of Byzantine architecture. And so we think that the architects who built the Dome of the Rock were Byzantine architects. So the Dome of the Rock represents... The Dome of the Rock is a mosque. We'll go to the inside of it in a moment, but I do want you to take note of its exterior shape. It is octagonal, and of its golden dome. Its architectural elements carry over from the Church of San Vitale in Ravenna because of the Byzantine builders. The Dome of the Rock is a sacred place for all three major world religions in the 6th century. Those three world religions are Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. So this is the interior of the mosque at the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. It is a holy place, and the Christians claim that it is the place that Moses received the 10 Commandments. The Jews claim that it is the site that Abraham prepared sacrifice of Isaac. So who's Abraham? To the Jewish people, Abraham is the father of all Jewish people. So in most religions, there's what we call a primordial couple, or the couple in which everybody descended from. In Judaism, it's Abraham and Sarah. In Christianity, it's Adam and Eve. So the Jews claim that this is the site in which Abraham prepared to sacrifice Isaac. It's also the site that the Temple of Solomon and King Herod was on, and it is where Muslims believe that Muhammad ascended into heaven. As far as I understand, women are not allowed into the mosque at the Dome of the Rock. It is considered one of the holiest of holy places. And I don't think that has anything to do with them being women. I think it has to do with the fact that women menstruate, was my understanding. But I don't know for 100% sure. I've had people tell me that's not true, and I've had people say, oh yeah, women aren't allowed into the Dome of the Rock. You can see that the mosque is built around the rock, and then the architectural detail in the interior of the dome has this beautiful patterned mosaic tile pattern. And then you see this dark green and light repeated pattern. That dark green and white repeated pattern with the Corinthian column capitals is something that we attribute to Islamic culture as well. You can definitely see the Roman culture here with the syncretism of the pillars. Okay, so we talked in Christianity about some very basics of Christianity. We're going to do the same for Islam. Let me start by saying that anyone who practices Islam is referred to as a Muslim. That people who believe in Islam believe in 5 pillars that they try to live by, and we'll go through them here in a moment. And the holy book from Islam is called the Quran, which just simply means the book. The Quran is the Christian, or the equivalent of the Christian Bible. So the 5 pillars of Islam. The first one is to declare that there is only one God, Allah, which means literally the God. The second one is to give alms to the needy. In Islam, this idea of giving alms to the needy is the equivalent of Christian tithing, or that idea that you give a percentage of your income to the needy. In Islam, they look at it a little bit different. There isn't necessarily a set amount that you're expected to give to someone. It's more a sense of, if God has provided you 2 shirts and your neighbor doesn't have a shirt, you are required to give your neighbor a shirt. It's looked at as God entrusted you with the shirt to make sure that the neighbor has the shirt that he needs. Sawam, which is a fasting. It's a fasting from sunup to sundown during the season of Ramadan. Ramadan comes at different times every year, but it's probably the most important of all holidays in the Muslim faith, or in the Islamic faith. When someone is celebrating Ramadan, we say Happy Eid, which means happy holiday. And when we look at fasting from sun up to sundown, it doesn't mean that you don't eat for the entire season of Ramadan. It simply means that you're not allowed to eat once the sun comes up until the sun goes down. So if you're fasting during Ramadan, you eat in the evening, and you're expected to eat a smaller amount to remind yourself of the sacrifice that Muhammad made for his people, I believe. Number 4 is to take a Hajj. For all those who are able, a believer should take a pilgrimage to Mecca at least once in their lifetime. A Hajj is a very expensive trip. It is a trip to the different holy sites in Saudi Arabia. And it's a trip that is lengthy. So I think the Hajj takes somewhere between 3 or 4 weeks, and it's expensive because you have to take time off of work to go on the Hajj. You have to take supplies. You have to have a good amount of money to go on a Hajj. And so for some families, only one person in the lifetime of the family gets to take a Hajj. But when they go on the Hajj, it is looked at as being good for the whole family. And the last pillar is Salah, and that is prayer 5 times a day in the direction of Mecca. Most mosques, when you go in, have a Qibla. That's the wall that points to the direction of Mecca, so that you know you're praying in the right direction. But also it's a praying towards Mecca is not necessarily always praying at a certain spot in the building. It just depends on where the building is in relationship to Mecca. So prayer 5 times a day. If you've ever been to an Islamic country, and I never have, but I've only gotten the opportunity to hear stories about how you get to hear the call to prayer 5 times a day. There's a recording system in which the mosque has on a speaker, and someone will stand at the bottom and sing the call to prayer 5 times a day. Now I believe that they record them, but way back in the olden days, before recording technology was available, there was a person who would run up the minaret and sing the call to prayer 5 times a day. This is the Kaaba. It is in Saudi Arabia, in Mecca. And it is a special place that was built by Abraham for God. It is located in the courtyard of a mosque. Now, I would imagine that the Kaaba was there and there was a mosque that was built around the Kaaba. But let's see, the Prophet Muhammad was born there at that spot in 570 AD. Today, the Kaaba is draped with gold and black cloth, and the gold around the cloth is decorated in beautiful Arabic letters from the Quran. Some mosques have architectural details that are very similar to Roman buildings. In this case, you're looking at a building that is somewhat similar to the Roman forums. Here at the very front, you have the minaret. That's the tall square pillar that it's stacked. That is where the call to prayer is sang from. You can see it has an entrance so that someone would be able to run up the side of it and sing the call to prayer 5 times a day. It has a courtyard with a peristyle columns that go all the way around the courtyard. And then there's an interior to the mosque as well. This one has 2 domes. And when you get into the interior of the mosque, sometimes there's a hypostyle hall. The first place we ever saw a hypostyle hall was in Egypt, where there were lots and lots of pillars. This one, I don't believe, has a hypostyle hall. This is the prayer hall at the Great Mosque in Cordoba, Spain. It dates back to somewhere between the 8th and 10th century. So I don't want to give you the idea that all mosques look like this inside. This one is an older mosque, an antique, ancient mosque. So that would, if you thought all mosques looked the same, that would mean that Notre Dame was the same as the church that you attend every day in your hometown. Obviously, not all mosques look the same. And some mosques have certain decorative elements that others don't. This one features this beautiful, bright, deep red and white alternating pattern, as well as columns that are Roman in nature with Corinthian capitals. When you get into the hypostyle hall, the point of the hall is to create a sense of disorientation so that your prayer is focused on Allah and not the trappings of the world and the different things that go on in the world every day in our lives. It's a way to focus on something outside of oneself. This is the dome that is in front of the mihrab at the Great Mosque in Cordoba, Spain. The mihrab is the area that's... Oh no, I'm sorry. I'll have to go back and look that up for you. The Qibla is the wall that points to Mecca. Here you see the dome is done in gold leafing. It has beautiful, intricate parts. It's done in beautiful gold mosaic tiling. The reason that you don't ever see figures in a mosque is because it was strictly forbidden by Muhammad. It was forbidden by Muhammad because sometimes in faith, Muhammad was worried about the worship of graven images. So he was worried that if there was an image of a person in your mosque, that you might end up worshiping the person instead of God, who is the point of worshiping. In Christian churches, we have a similar theology viewpoint in Protestant Christian churches versus Catholic Christian churches. Catholic churches, it's fine to have images of people. In Protestant churches, it is not. So those variations in the practice of the belief system exist in Christianity. In Islam, there are no pictures allowed in the mosque. You can see the mosque has a clerestory right below the dome, where natural light comes in and shines on that beautiful gold tesserae. This is a Quran page from the 9th or 10th century. Just like in illuminated manuscripts in Christianity in the Bible, we see that the Quran also has versions of beautiful illuminated manuscript. The Arabic letters are created in a very artistic way with a beautiful brush and creates beautiful patterning. It is my understanding, I've been told differently by a few people, that the Quran, while it has been translated into English and published as a book, unless the Quran is in its original Arabic form, it isn't a holy book. Anybody who is Muslim would go to the mosque and hear prayer led in Arabic. So, if your first language is not Arabic, you still would practice your faith in Arabic. This is the mosque lamp of Safa ad-Din Tukutzimur, which is not very good pronunciation, I apologize. It's from Egypt, from 1340. It is made of glass with enamel decoration. This mosque lamp is just absolutely gorgeous. It's about a foot high. It's at the British Museum in London. And you can see the enameling is at the top part, the enameling is solid. In the center part, the enameling is done on glass. And so you get this beautiful ray of light that shines through the lamp. And illuminates the Quranic text through the light. These little ear projections are where chains would go to hang the lamp up so that the worshiper could see through the lamp. It creates a really beautiful pattern. So we're going to talk a little bit about Islam in Africa. Why? Because it's my specialty and I don't ever get to talk about it. So I thank you for listening to me about Islam in Africa. Obviously, this is Islam in Northwest Africa, and I don't have time to teach you about Islam's major impact in West Africa, but we will talk about it here in the context that I know mostly of. So let's talk about it in the Tuareg people. The Tuareg people are a group of people. The Tuareg people often, for important ceremonies, will wear these large cloth wrappers. The cloth wrappers, the larger the wrapper, the more wealthy and important and prominent you are within the community. Here you see that this wrapper has a pocket for a Quran, and it has Arabic text on it to identify that this is the pocket for the Quran. Here you see a Tuareg man. He's dressed in his finest leather work. Leather work is a craft that is highly coveted in the Tuareg communities. They also, like I told you, make leather saddles and for camels that cross the desert. Camels are more well suited than horses to cross the desert because they have very long eyelashes and they can store water and keep from having to drink. Well, I guess they don't store water. They have humps of fat that, but it keeps them from having to drink for longer periods of time. You can see that the Tuareg man wraps his head in the blue headscarf, and then he has a long flowing robe, and then the purse that hangs around his neck is one that the Tuareg are famous for making. He has a cane or staff in one hand and a power object in the other hand. The slide on the right is a Tuareg man who's pouring Tuareg tea. If you're ever in Africa and somebody offers you a cup of tea, do not be rude. Always be sure to say thank you and to drink the tea. I do hear it's really, really strong, but it is supposed to be an act of kindness. Mosques are places that can be created anywhere. The Tuareg people at times will make a mosque out of just rocks and the earth. And so in this case, a man is worshiping. The only thing that's required to have it be a mosque is a place that the worshiper can stop and wash before they go into the prayer place, and then an area for the Qibla wall that points to Mecca. So here you have a place where the worshiper can clean before he enters into the prayer area, and then you have the space that points to Mecca. This is the mud brick mosque at Mali in Déjeuner. Déjeuner is the name of the city. The country is Mali. So the mosque is made of mud brick, and it's made of rectangular mud bricks, and so they take on this sort of conical form in the architecture. The sticks that you see that project from the side of the mosque wall are sticks that are used by plasterers to reapply mud brick material to the side of the mosque. Just like in the United States, erosion from natural elements causes older walls to wash away. And so here in the desert, the wind friction a lot of times will cause deterioration of the walls of the mosque. And so people who are plasterers will come along and plaster the side of the mosque. Plastering is a very skilled trade that tends to run in families. So if your dad was a plasterer, then you would be trained to be a plasterer. If all the men in your family were plasterers, you would train to be a plasterer. Or if you wanted to be an architect and you had an uncle that was an architect, then you would go and stay with him and learn how to be an architect through your uncle. This is an amulet from West Africa. It is made by the Tuareg people. The Tuareg are excellent metal workers and leather workers. Here you can see that it's a necklace that would be worn around the neck. We saw the guy with the blue outfit on with the necklace of leather work. This is a pendant that has a selection from the Quran inside the amulet. And so the amulet tends to take on the shape of the Quran that is on the inside of the amulet. It's handcrafted, made of silver and precious materials. So I didn't want to give you the idea that Islamic art is all religious. It is not. There are various pieces of Islamic art that are attributed to the different the different reigns of the caliph. And so this one is aristocracy art. It has a geometric feel to it, and you can see it has a sense of flatness in that geometric feel. You can see the stairs that go up on the left-hand side that alternate in orange and green to a doorway. It illustrates a narrative, a story between two people. I'm sorry, I don't know the story behind it. I would highly encourage you to look it up if you are interested in the Islamic art with figures in it. But you can see the different planes of space and how they flatten out towards the picture plane, how they are situated. in terms of space. And so you get this interesting sense of depth and flatness all at the same time.